We are currently in Jujuge,
also historically frequented by the Anishinaabe Nation. We invite you to share in the chat the Indigenous people who have shaped the territory where you are located in today. I now give the floor to Audrey. Audrey, we can't hear you. Of course. Wait, hello, as my colleague mentioned it. I'm Audrey, and I am an assistant co-moderator for Qc-NEIHR. So welcome to the 5th webinar in series Innovation and Promising Practices that promote reconciliation, indigenization, and decolonization of post-secondary environments and the success and practices of Aboriginal students. Today's webinar will focus on Parity, or all Indigenous communities and positions dedicated to reconciliation. In response to the call for education of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission of Canada, many post-secondary institutions have established Parity, or all Indigenous committees, and dedicated reconciliations positions to support their institutions' initiatives. These bodies play a variety of roles within the governance of post-secondary institutions, ranging from advisory roles to the administrative management of decolonization, reconciliation, and Indigenous initiatives. Some of these bodies are actively involved in strategic planning for reconciliation at their institutions and involve interdepartmental and interfacility champions for scaling up transformations and involve communities, and dedicated positions are still recent initiatives in Quebec. As our first panelist, we welcome Annie Poulin-Salfasson, one of the founding members of the Quebec Committee and a member of the Wendat Nation from the Université de Montréal. She's a full professor at the School of Social Work at the University of Montreal and holds the Canada Research Chair on Transgender Children and Their Families. The floor is yours, Annie. Thank you, Xiaowenk, Audrey, Kwekwe, everyone. I'm very happy to be here today. This will be very informal, actually. I was asked to talk about the Kwekwe Committee, and I want to explain what it is because I'm sure a lot of people don't know what it is. So it's an employee committee at Université de Montréal, Indigenous Committee. And what's interesting in that committee is that it's for all employees. So it's not just for professors or other professions, but it's everyone, all the Indigenous people from the Montreal University, Université de Montréal that can join this committee. It was put into place during COVID, and sometimes we forget what happens during COVID, but we haven't written much. The Quebec Committee was put into place in the beginning of the year 2020, and when we launched the Place au Premier Peuple 2022-2023, we had just hired Caroline Gélina, who was our main counselor. And now it's Samuel Rainville that occupies that role. We are not many, just like in many universities. We felt a need when we met Caroline throughout an activity. We wanted to create more connections with people because people felt isolated. It's very rare that we see other Indigenous people in our same faculties as us, and so we wanted to put that network into place to know who is Indigenous, and it's not the first thing you necessarily say when you present yourself, and so we were able to talk about different challenges for Indigenous people, and instead of taking certain decisions alone, because sometimes that's a heavy responsibility. There are many different communities, and we can't just assume we know everything from everyone. So we started sending emails and around and asking, oh, do you have time to this evening? I wanted to talk about this issue and that issue. And we started talking to professors and other professionals from the institution. And in September 2020, we created officially the Quebec Committee. So we were able to put forward Indigenous values, but from different nations. How can I put this? One of the first things we did in collaborations with the Secretariat, there are several things we've done since the creation of the Quebec Committee, but we put into place the prize for the valorisation des langues autochtones to that has to do with Indigenous languages, and it changed department, but we've worked with them to value Indigenous language, because these languages, we don't talk them necessarily, and so we put into place this prize. And we have a teacher that teaches Innu languages. For example, for me, and then when that nation, when we don't really have the occasion to learn or even talk our language, we thought it was important. So we decided to develop something that celebrated these languages, and that in the University of Montreal we have an Innu language expert that transmits this knowledge. We gave the first prize for the National Day of Indigenous People in 2020, and Yvette Molène was the first recipient of the prize. She is our Innu language knowledge keeper. And then we gave the prize to two people the following year. Is very hard to choose who is going to receive the prize. This is an open contest. Anyone can participate, and you can also send other people's names. We had Catherine Henry and ERRSA-Qc that come from Kanigaha Nation, and Marcel Baudou, that is when that language professor. And in 2022, we gave it to Nicole Petitquet as a Natikamek language knowledge keeper. And so that's a very interesting project, because not only does it allow us to talk among us, to understand the challenges within the university world and the challenges in terms of decolonization, but also to value the cultures within the university. And when we're not a lot, it's hard to do that. So we're able to do so with Quebec, and we can also participate in, for example, Semenetic, that takes place right before the reconciliation week, and that's a mythical week. And what we did, we had a panel to talk about the Indigenous identity within the university. And so this committee, as I say, is quite informal, but after about 3 years of existence, was able to do very interesting things. And what's most important for me is that we can consult each other to take decisions, informed decisions, because often we are asked in the university, can you be part of this committee, that committee, and can you do this and that? And we are supposed to represent, but we don't represent. So the committee is very interesting. It allows us to share our knowledge and our perspectives, and have a space to share our perspectives. That's what Quick is. I haven't prepared anything formal. That's about it. Yes, thank you, Annie, for sharing that. Why is it important for you to have that committee when you think about you and your experience? Oh, yes, I haven't talked about this, but beyond that, there's the help that we give each other, because it's not always easy to be someone alone in your department. As I said, we often have roles that people don't impose them onto us, but they ask us, and it can become a heavy responsibility. It's great to have other people from other communities be able to share that load with us. And the Quebec Committee is a group of people that are very much in contact. We support each other, and someone is not scared to send messages to the chat, and everyone is able to chip in and share their perspective on the challenges, but also we share good news that happens in our personal lives. I think this is a very strong group in terms of support as employees. And as I said, it's not just teachers or employees. This is very special because it's not a common group to see in universities, not to have a group that is that doesn't have any faculty barriers. Does the committee help other instances within the universities, like the student committee, like the Indigenous student committee? Is it one of the roles that you have? I looked yesterday. I looked it up yesterday. I have to prepare something for the Quick Committee. I'm one of the founding members, and I'm not even able to present you anything that's written. That's very interesting, because if you talk to people in the university, they're going to say, yes, we know the Quick Committee because we've been invited, because we've developed things, but we don't really have any formal structure. We're an organic entity. Someone that works, for example, to help support the students, they also work at the Quick committee, so they will bring up any issues to the committee, and so it creates networks within informal networks, but very strong knit networks, because we're a little bit everywhere, actually. So yeah, I think we work with all of these people, but not in a formal way. If you look into any formal roles, we won't find them. But because it is our job, it is part of our job within the university, we understand these issues. That's very interesting, the way you're talking about it. It's not that it's not just for faculty members, but also other employees from the university. Maybe there's less of a hierarchy, but it reconnects all the members, and they all have a contribution, an important contribution to bring to the group. Yes, exactly. We don't even have a chair or vice chair. I can't even tell you who organizes the Quick Committee. We develop this in an organic way, and when we talk about an Indigenous employee, when we hear about an Indigenous employee, we bring them in. And before Christmas, we had a little party, and people came to someone's house, and we ate together. And so we just invite people to join as we hear about them. There's no one's responsible for the Quick Committee, and I think that is very valuable. When people join us is because they want to be part of it. We don't have formal roles. What is your vision for the committee in long term? Well, we want to continue being heard about. We want to continue valuing and supporting Indigenous people and cultures within the university. I think maybe through that type of committee, there might be more people that shares their background. We don't even have an employee list. We don't really know who is part of it, and I hope it will continue having that effect, where more and more employees hear about us and they just want to join. And we'll continue building that network within the University of Montreal. I see a question here. Do you feel respected and supported by other entities within UDM? I'd say yes. Like I said before, we're not a formal entity. We cannot say that the Quebec committee demands this or that, but there's, I believe, the university wants to work with us. I see that, yes, they want to work with the committee. There's also a certain recognition. I believe people say, oh, this is an Indigenous person that reaffirms themselves as Indigenous. They must be members of the Quick Committee. Even though there's no formal membership, people just assume they are part of the committee. And I think, yes, the university wants to work with us and understand what the perspective of Indigenous people is. Annie, thank you so much for being here today with us and presenting the Quick Committee, even if you don't have any documents. I think that was a very well appreciated portrait of the Quick.
Pour notre dernière invitée, on accueille Jeannette Marc de l'Université du Québec.
For our last panelist, we welcome Jeannette Marc. She has occupied many positions at UQAT. She's been a strategic advisor on reconciliation and Indigenous education since 2002. So I'll give Janet the floor. Hello, everyone. It's a pleasure for me to spend some time with you. Today, I've prepared a PowerPoint, and I'll share it with you. I want to make sure that you don't see the comments. Do you see the comments? Okay. Do you see the comments now? No? Okay, great. Fantastic. So, I'm holding this position. It's been quite recent, since March 2021. The position of strategic advisor has been created, and I've started full-time at that position since last fall, because over the 8 last years, I was at the continuous training and formation department at the UQAT. So if I follow my PowerPoint, what I was asked is to share my experiences and my point of views linked to today's theme and talk to you about my position. And throughout my presentation, you'll observe that there has been some success stories, but also challenges that we've been facing in a university like ours. So the objective of my presentation is to try to make this as concrete as possible. So that's what I'll try to do. So the creation of my position as a strategic advisor for reconciliation and Indigenous education. You have a summary. There's, for example, a summary of the provide advice and follow up on the application of various Indigenous issues, act as a resource person at UQAC for staff members, Indigenous and non-Indigenous students, and also Indigenous partners. Some are internal, but also outside of UQAT. And also another stream is to provide analysis, advice, and assistance to UQAT management on matters related to Indigenous cultures and Indigenous issues. It's a wide mandate. When the position was created, I highlighted that one of the danger it would be a position that everything goes in with requests coming from all over. And sometimes it's the danger that maybe appearing relating to that kind of position. In order to show you in more detail some example of the tasks and duties and responsibilities linked to this position, of course, there are the action plans, ERRSA plan actions linked to Indigenous people also, but there's also institutional action plan of the university that also includes aspects and approaches to Indigenous issues. Another stream is to develop and implement a process for developing Indigenous students. I see my colleague that just talked before me also has that in its mandate, and also we support and document the work of the university in the indigenization of courses, classes, and programs. We have advanced in that stream, but there are still ongoing dialogues with different staff and department and faculties. We also see to the implementation and organization of workshops and information sessions on decolonization and indigenization of classes, courses, programs, and services at UQAC. We also ensure implementation of the recommendations and calls to action of the commissions of inquiry concerning Indigenous people and universities. The university have a role to play relating to those reports. And we also train staff on various subjects related to Indigenous issues when it's required. We have many trainings that are offered free for the whole university community, trainings that are on-site trainings or face-to-face, or also from there's also Indigenous Peoples 101 that has been offered that lasts about 7 hours. That is offered also for staff and also the wider public through virtual means. And finally, on those duties and responsibilities, of course, participating in key meetings, conferences, events, and training related to Indigenous issues. Sometimes act as spokesperson for ERRSA-Qc in certain events, and also provide advice and support to staff. That can be in order to resolve an issue, a problem, or situation, but also we need sometimes to refer as needed to available internal and external resources. Of course, I'm not alone in my team. Since fall 2021, we created a service, Mamawi Miki Modan, which means building together. We have Frederic, who's an advisor on development of Indigenous projects. She has a diploma in anthropology. There's Mylène Jubinville, who's a research agent. She has been trained in history. There's me, of course, and finally, Suzy Rateau, who is the communication liaison agent. She also has on her mandate recruitment in field, and Suzy has diploma in preschool education and primary education. Of course, the service of Mamawi Miki Modan, we are 4 professionals, and certainly the list of projects, initiatives, it's a long list, and sometimes it can scare us, but we work day by day, 1 month by 1 month, and year by year to advance. And in our team, it's really new since fall, actually summer 2022, there's a new vice-rectorate that was created. We call it the VIP. It's a vice-rectorate for reconciliation and international and partnership development. So the director is Nick Tram. So this new vice-rectorate, you can see here the field of responsibilities on the left. There are 4 main strategic issues, transversal issues. We talk about relations and involvement with First Nation peoples. There's UCAT's internalization, there's partnership development, continuing education, and of course, institutional translation, because we cannot forget that UCAT is member of the EQ network, which is Francophone, but we have a special authorization in order to offer English programs for Indigenous communities. So on the right-hand side, you see the several services that are part of the VRIP. There's continuing education department. There's also UCAT's international partnership development, and of course, the team on equity, diversity, and inclusion. So those are teams that already existed in the past, except the service Manawi Minikidam, that were regrouped under this same and common descriptor in order to break and overcome the silos. And a new aspect of this VISC directorate and LIMTRAM, the director was saying and telling us that we are ourselves reading our own history. We are builders, and we have a white page in front of us. And so the whole team has the task of write our own history.
Actuellement, on y retrouve près de 30 personnes.
Well, at the VRIP, we currently have 30 people that are working there, and there's a lot of restructuration work being done right now. This is one of the challenges that we face. I just wanted to show you the chart, the organization chart. Oh, there, I can't find it. That's strange, because I had the organization chart that I put in the PowerPoint. At UCAT, like in other universities, you have the board, and then you have the rectorate and the vice rectorate for research and teaching and for the creation, and then we have our new vice rectorate. You might have heard about school in Indigenous studies, and I believe there's 7 right now. Some are Atikamek, and they work under the vice rectorship in research and creation. So the Mamawin Mikimodan isn't part of the Indigenous school or the vice rectorship. After that, to come back to that Mamawi Mikimodan service, I wanted to show you examples of files we worked on and projects we worked on in the last 2 years. First of all, there's the multi-service table MAMU. Then we have the putting into place or showcasing Indigenous art in the centers and campuses. We also talk about analyzing needs for trainings every couple of years. Then we also have a process of land acknowledgement. We formed a committee to talk on that file. We also have guide and good practices. There's a need for that. Another example is the work being done by my colleague Jimeville with Indigenous terminology. So it defines the different concepts: decolonization, indigenization, cultural security, self-determination, diversity, inclusion. How can we put that into place in classes and in the university, etc.? We have a document that is being written right now, and it's a tool that will be available for for the staff. These are some examples of what has been put into place. We have the setting up the MAMU table. That is part of the action plan of ERRSA-Qc to create a table, multi-service table with different services. And for board members, professionals, and teachers. So you can find the circles here. There are about 15 services and departments, ERRSA International, and the library. There's a library that for Amos, Val d'Or, and others, the service for the students, recruitment and communication service, the SPIFAT, pedagogy, university training and pedagogy service, and other services. And so all of these services meet up together. And actually this morning I had a meeting with the table. Every 2 months we meet together, and it's very interesting, very stimulating, because everyone comes in with their own reality, and we put a lot of we make a lot of space for Indigenous issues. And what's interesting with that type of table, we see that the perspectives and the challenges for Indigenous students and Indigenous members of the university isn't just the responsibility of one person, but is very multifaceted. And it's very interesting to see how we can make that responsibility communal, and how each service can provide. And so that's why it's interesting talking together and reflecting on good practices and projects. So with that image, we can see how big of a network we have to build within the universities. We also here have a list of what the table does. Well, it promotes coordination and collaboration in all projects and initiatives that affect Indigenous issues. It improves communication because we're sharing and disseminating our information related to Indigenous projects and initiatives across the various departments. We mobilize and consult the actors involved in the different services, share good practices and initiatives, and of course, establish links between services and departments. So we are now finishing our second year in June. During the first year, we would meet up every month. And after the evaluation, people said that it was coming up very quickly to do it every month. This year, the meetings have been done every 2 months, and the meetings are already scheduled beforehand in the fall. It's the MAMU table that prepares the agenda. So this is an example of a committee that exists. These are employees that are members of the communities. Certain Indigenous people work there. I'm one of them. There's also Dupuis from another service that works at that table. And for the most part, it's ERRSA-Qc employees that are non-Indigenous. And it's very stimulating when we're in the meeting. I find it very interesting to see and discover who are the allies at ERRSA-Qc. And at the same time, we diffuse information as we go. What we wish is that information is shared within the teams. We here have a list of specific projects according to the issues identified. For example, the library responsibles work a lot on decolonizing the library. There's Indigenous student graduation for cultural safety. There's a launch of a checklist in Indigenous language and signage in Indigenous languages in the different centers and campuses for the decade of Indigenous languages 2022-2032. Collaborative space for departments, enhancement of the English-speaking Indigenous student experience. And there's a National Day of Truth and Reconciliation. Of course, we have consultation space collaboration between SMM and SPUFAD. What is that consultation space? Well, after meeting up with the multi-service Mamou table, we discovered you have Bruno Philippe Richard that works in the service of pedagogy and long distance teaching with my colleague Frédéric Cornelier. They both have the responsibility to plan the activities. And what do we do? What are the goals for this space? Well, it's to promote the teaching and enhancement of Indigenous perspectives in courses, reflect on pedagogical approaches on teaching Indigenous people, and provide resource materials, workshops, and training for faculty. That is, of course, the first step towards the path of decolonization and indigenization. Sometimes I've heard professors saying, well, I'd like to do something, but I don't know what to do, where to start. So especially for people that haven't worked around Indigenous issues and they're not really part of the network, it can be very hard for professors to put into place that space where we organize workshops or we provide documentation on the ERRSA-Qc-NEIHR website. Now, establishment of the Territorial Recognition Committee. This is something we worked on for over a year. It's on this file. For us, it was very important to take our time and to do it very well. Often when we listen to our elders, they say that often. Bagage means, take your time. And I'm looking at the time, actually, Audrey. Is it, am I okay? Am I good? Yes, I just want to make sure we have space at the end for questions. Okay, so this is a committee. This is a joint committee. It was important to have a joint committee for this topic, such as land acknowledgement. So I'm not going to go into detail. You have a few names here. We find half the members are Indigenous, and we also have Indigenous people from outside of UQAT. There's a lot of work that has been done. We've listened to people to continue our process. And what comes out is that the territorial recognition was approved by the board last week, and the launch will take place in the upcoming months. We were wondering what the challenges are. Well, what I've been observing, I've been at UQAT for 20 years. Since I've been working here, we noticed that, and you might know about this and experience it, that there's not enough information. Some people just don't know much, especially the staff members. So these are challenges that we face. It's important to take our time and educate and to listen. Humility is very important. Sometimes we don't know and we need help. So we need to self-educate. So you have quite a list of ingredients that you need, as I call them. And within the university, of course, we want to hire more Indigenous people. And as you probably know, it's not very easy. And one of the things, as someone that reflects on this a lot on different committees, I believe it's important to do that introspection and to reflect on the way you do things. In terms of the committees, I was wondering, in terms of reconciliation committees, if we only find one Indigenous person out of 10, is it really a reconciliation committee? And it's the same thing when we're talking about indigenization committees. I was talking to someone recently that said that indigenization is doing things the Indigenous way. So if in a committee of 15 people with only one Indigenous person, can we really talk about indigenization? I believe not. I wanted to mention that. So thank you very much. That was about it. Thank you. Thank you very much for that beautiful presentation. It's very nice seeing how things are being put into place throughout the years. It's very inspiring to see the things you were able to do and consult many people within the university itself. I know one of our panelists is going to leave soon, so maybe if you want to add something before you leave. Yes, I'm sorry, I have to leave. I have another meeting, but thank you so much. I've learned a lot from your initiatives.
J'espère qu'on va pouvoir rester en contact. En fait, on n'a pas juste le
I
comité.
hope we keep contact. It's not only from the committee at Université de Montréal. There's a lot of things that happens from the top. It's really interesting hearing from your perspectives. Thank you. And I want to add, I've put in the chat a link for feedback, and that's very important for us. We use it later on to work on the webinar. So thank you to everyone that participated or will participate. Thank you, Leila.